And okay, done.
Cool. Yep, I could see that. So you can admit Josh.
Yep.
And then when 4 o'clock comes, let her rip.
Mm-hmm.
So we have about a minute before we get going here.
Okay.
Hey, Ingrid. Ara.
Hey,
Josh.
Josh, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Brittany, how you doing? I'm one of the teachers at Journey.
Hi, all is well. Hi, everyone. I am running per usual. So we're just ready to get the show on the road so we can, I'm hustling per usual. Shout out to the title.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I see what you did there.
Yeah. And I'm a pro at it. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah.
Okay. Hey, Richard, if you can hear us, Shay has the other classroom open.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Ready, Ara?
Yep.
All right, I got a quick question. Are you in two different accounts right now?
Yeah, just so I can see how it looks.
Okay, cool. I just got to make, everybody gotta look out for the.
Are you gonna get the music going?
Oh, okay, let me. Okay. Find it real quick.
Welcome to the latest edition of Journey's Hustle Pro. I am your host or hostess with the mostess. I'm Ingrid Green, and today we have with us Brittany Claybrooks. I am so excited for this one.
Hi.
This is gonna be good. How you doing today, Brittany?
All is well. How are you?
I'm stoked. I'm good.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for us is first let me start by introducing myself. I'm Ingrid Green, and I work with Journey, and it is my honor to moderate this. And I think that being from Howard University, studying architecture, growing up in another country, and being here in Detroit has really helped me appreciate the journey. And so I'm here with the youngest council member of East Orange, New Jersey.
Yes,
Brittany
I am.
Claybrooks. Yes. So tell us a little bit about your journey.
Where do I start? So I want to start with the fact that I am born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, as well as Inkster, Michigan, two of what I like to call the toughest cities in the United States. So I'll start there, born and raised Wayne County. And I happen to have went to college at Florida A&M University and grad school at New York University. And currently, I do serve as the youngest member of council in the city of East Orange. And I was the youngest in the city's history to do so. But my another career that is near and dear to my heart is a career as an urban planner, where I serve in the city of Plainfield, New Jersey, as economic development manager, where you'll probably find me most of my days, splitting my time between the residents of East Orange and the city of Plainfield. So yeah, that is where I am today. And there's so much that have brought me to this point. So I'm very interested in the conversation leading up to it, so we can talk about how important hustling is along the way.
I mean, you just jump right into it.
No, I'm very excited about that, because you can't have someone from the city, because I believe that being from Detroit or the city itself is synonymous with hustle, and there's no way around that. And that's something that you'll find about folks from the city, no matter where they are in the world, that is the single most thing that we all have in common. So
a lot of people have a misconception about hustle. So let's put it in the context of career journeys a little bit. I've heard people talk about hustle is the discipline of working hard and showing up. Some people think that hustle is slickness. How would you describe hustle and its part in your career journey?
So it's more, and it is true that people misconstrue it with working hard, or, having one or two jobs or starting a business, but it's also in your personal life too. It's a way of life, sort of. It's how you get over obstacles. I happen to have been born into a family where my parents were incarcerated my entire life. Well, not my entire life, my entire childhood, for the most part, in and out. Um, I ended up having to go to foster care, and was adopted later on in my childhood. And then, independent again at 17, and having to navigate that wasn't an easy thing to do. Whether it's trying to figure out how I'm going to, stay out of trouble, or how my family was going to make ends meet, or it was just it's a way of life, in the sense that obstacles come. When I was in college, we had times where we slept in a car for a week in between places. We had to figure out how we were going to eat at the time, but still having our goal in mind. So if my friends had the meat, I may have had the sides. If, somebody had the car, I had the gas money, right? If, it was raining outside, but I needed to get to class to turn the assignment in, it's making sure I have an umbrella, being prepared for the day, because if you don't work, if you don't get through whatever is in the way, whether it's financial, whether it's personal, you don't eat, or you don't get to the other side. And so for me, hustling has been a way of life. It's actually all I know, because I happen to have been born into a circumstance, like many kids in the city of Detroit, where your parents are not, the wealthiest people, or they are not, a part of the top tier of folks. Are, if you look at the makeup of our city, that's just the way it is for a lot of people. But that didn't mean that success wasn't attainable. But I had to get around some stuff. I had to figure out how I was going to eat, and then still stay focused on the fact that I wanted to be something on the other side. And so, again, I'll always just reiterate that it's a lifestyle,
I got you. So would you say that, because you went from the childhood you described to being the youngest council member of East Orange, New Jersey. So would you say that it's a straight path from
No.
from A to B? Like
No.
is it a given that you're gonna wind up something like?
No. So it actually wasn't a straight path. In fact, this path that I'm on right now was not likely. In high school, I was expelled from the Michigan public school system, period. I was going into the 11th grade, and I had got into like one of many fights, but in this particular situation, the fight just got really rough. And a teacher was, involved, and she had, been struck a few times in the fight. They determined that it was me that did it. And so I had two options. I had to either deal with the police or be expelled from school. At that time, a lot of people know about the busing situation where kids from Detroit and Inkster were having to go to schools in the neighboring suburbs because our schools were closing down at the time. So, we were dealing with what that meant for us. We were bringing our culture to the game, when we got there. And having had such a troubled not only want to say troubled, haven't had just that, just all the things that teenagers go through on top of, the difference in where you're going to school versus where you're growing up, it caused some issues. And when I was expelled, I think that was the first time where the semester that I was expelled was the first time in high school that I had gotten like dean's list or, honor worthy grades. And I had gotten my first letter in the mail from Robert Morris University saying that I was accepted into college. I had gotten good grades. So they start inquiring around that time. And for me, that was the first time I realized, like, wait, I could be something. I don't know what, but I'm going to be something. And just from there, it was just about going in whatever direction felt right. So the first thing after high school, I actually ended up getting into school. I had to catch up. So I had to go to school in the daytime and do makeup homework from the previous grade at night so I could graduate on time and be in the right grade. And so when you look at someone who is experiencing that, the path to councilwoman is probably not the first thing you're going to think about. When you're getting off the city bus, first thing you want to do is fight as soon as you come out your uniform, or you're doing donuts in the street with your friends the minute you can drive. You're doing what people around you do. It's our culture. And people don't usually associate those activities with people who are successful. And then you have someone like me who, by the grace of God, has been able to defy that. But in the meantime, I've served as a math tutor. I've also served as a member on the maintenance staff of an apartment complex to make ends meet. I've interned and I've, been without a job. I've had times where financial aid came through, and then I've had times where I was barely eating. So on the journey, it was very gray, and it had ebbs and flows, which is really what life is about. And then, you know, life would have it that I would continue, and I get to sit where I am and have the privileges that I have now. But it definitely wasn't a straight path. And if you look at statistics by themselves, kids who are aging out of foster care systems, or, having parents, at least one who has been incarcerated, those statistics are almost slim to none. So no, it wasn't a straight path, to answer your question.
Tell me a little bit about, because I can't remember if you mentioned this in your intro, but tell me a little bit about the role that Tallahassee Community College played in your journey. I think there was a number of kids, maybe 50 that, like, tell me what happened there. What happened there?
So I actually was able to go to Tallahassee Community College through a referral program that a man named Mr. Brown had in Detroit. And there was a lot of kids who went. I want to say it was about 50 of us in my cohort the year of 2009. And we started at the community college because not all of us were either ready. He did not deem all of us ready to be on a 4-year campus. And that had less to do with grades than it did lifestyles, or, maybe who you were at the time. It may not have matched with a 4-year university situation, or some of us were in transition. Some of us were in at-risk youth programs, or at risk of not succeeding, which I was one of those children. Although I had good grades, there were other life things happening. So I got to go to Tallahassee Community College. I applied, I got accepted. And, while I was there, I got to really see what it was like to live, on my own. And not even living on my own, because I had taken care of myself under the roof of other folks. I have, pretty much looked out for my own well-being. However, it allowed me the opportunity to see other things. I got to see open grass. I got to see buildings that, a place where, people who looked like me lived in the predominant parts of that city, but it didn't look like where I came from. So I was able to see excellence happen in a way that I was not used to. And in addition, I was able to join a church, become spiritually grounded. I was able to, become a part of the student activity board. I was able to join organizations, and, I worked there. I also was able to do work study and meet my friends, my roommates, who also were from the city of Detroit and who came from the same referral program that I did. So while I wasn't ready to live on a 4-year college campus at the time, I was able to get up again and do the hustle. If you can take the D dot, and get around the city of Detroit, it was a no-brainer that I was getting on the Star Metro and getting past this little country town to get to my classes, right? So it was already ingrained, but I had the opportunity to do that while I was picking where I would spend, the rest of my bachelor's program. And it played a large role in where I am because it was the first step, and I didn't know what was going to happen afterwards, but at least it was a step in the right direction,
So let's talk a little bit about the mystery of things, because it feels like you didn't always necessarily do what was familiar or what was expected of you, or you didn't always make choices in your career journey that everybody else would have picked. So talk a little bit about. I remember you were you left a full-time job to intern somewhere. So
yes.
how does that, that is not a popular choice. No,
no,
I'm not
it
sure
wasn't.
who
Especially
does
when
that
you grow
and
up poor.
becomes as successful as you. Who does that knowing that oh yeah, I got my eye on the prize and I'm going to be a councilman. So let talk to me a little bit about what made you choose to leave that full-time job. Talk about that moment.
So when I was at the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice, I was very fortunate to have had a full-time job in college. I worked for government, and I could talk for days about how many people had to invest in me for me to be able to even get that opportunity. But when I was graduating college, the thing that people want to do is they want to get jobs. They want to be stable. I had the opportunity to already be that in college because there was no choice. If I didn't work, I didn't eat. If I wasn't a math tutor, if I wasn't a maintenance person at the apartment complex, if I didn't work for the university, if I didn't do a job of some sort, I wasn't going to eat. So I didn't know what it was like to just experience something for the sake of learning. I was doing what I felt I needed to do and what I had to do. I was surviving. I was making it. Right. And I was doing that. And when I got the opportunity to intern in DC, they were like, yeah, you're only going to make like $500 every 2 weeks. And I was like, okay, I got a car, I got insurance, I have a family, I have a family back at home, I have things going on. But what I felt like I needed to do at that time was invest in myself and invest in, where I was going. And I didn't necessarily know what would be on the other side of the internship, but just for a period, all I wanted to do was just live. I wanted to see what it was like to just have a learning experience without worrying about surviving. And so I did it, and it was exciting. And the most exciting part about it was I actually played small when I went for that internship. Not really small, because I played smaller than what I got. So I went to apply and do John Conyers, who was the congressman at the time, because nothing was more important to me than Detroit. No matter where I was in the world, that was what was important to me. And getting back to it was important to me. And everybody who knew me knew, that's what they knew about me. And so I applied and I said that I would prefer to be placed with John Conyers. Got a call back and said, well, we're looking at your resume and we want to place you on the House floor under Democratic leader Pelosi's office. You would be the second intern in, in the history of our modern program to do so. And there were only 2 interns in the entire Capitol Hill internship programs who were allowed to do it. So it was myself and another boy from California. And I was like, this is what happens when you just trust that you're doing the right thing. I didn't know what better would look like, but I always was able to, I've been given this innate gift to kind of envision better and then walk in the direction of what I believe better is. And it's not an easy thing to do, but I just trusted that it was the right thing to do. And I did. And I got a call back and said, we know you want to be here, but this is where we believe you're qualified to be. So this is where we're going to put you. And I was like, okay, this is what we're doing.
Okay, so I gotta pause for a second here. For anybody who doesn't know, can you tell us a little bit about who Nancy Pelosi is in the grand scheme of things?
Okay, so she's actually now the Speaker of the House for the second time. And then in between, she served as the Democratic leader. And when she was the Democratic leader is when I got to intern through the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation in her office, but she was also the first woman Speaker of the House. And she is doing her second go around. So she ain't a light, she don't walk lightly, you know, but yeah, it was interesting. But again, it was what felt right. It was interesting.
All right. So
she's not a light.
She's not lightweight. She's not lightweight. I mean, no. she's not a nobody, right? So no. Okay, moving along.
Somebody said she's been heavy.
Would you say that? Well, here's a question, and I don't know if you've considered this. It doesn't have to be deep, and you don't have to, swing for the fence on this one. But if you had to define success, how would you put it into words? How would you define success?
I define it as doing, and I know this sounds really cliche, but I define it as doing what you've been set out to do, and that doesn't always look like work. I think as a people, we've defined success as, what we do, what we produce, how we produce for other people, what our ability to bring in income is. And I've gotten to a point where I no longer define that as success, because I believe that has come out of a survival mentality. And while I had to survive for so long, I've gotten to a point where success is me just doing what feels right to me. And I recognize it as a privilege to sit from this vantage point because I've been allowed to do so much. But I believe that that's the blessing in somebody like me who's had to survive for so long, being able to sit at a point and now look at success differently than what it was. Because at one point, success was just making it to school. That was success. And then at another point, it's making it through school and surviving and not starving. And then at another point, success was just getting the job and showing up every day. Then another point was getting the promotion. Everything was about everything else outside of me. Now, success is just doing what I believe is best for me, regardless to what part of me it will serve, right? And I think that that's what it is. It's just doing what's best for you and taking the opportunities presented to you for you to do that, regardless of how uncertain they are, or how paralyzed you feel by the fear of possibly doing so.
Okay. I mean, that's a great definition of success. I love it. I love it. It allows you to celebrate where you are and how you're doing right now. It's not some far off thing. It's not something you achieved in the past and you could never. I love it.
It's given 100% of what you got to where you at,
right.
Like give 100%, to where you are at the time until God or circumstances shift you up into other directions. You can't be successful nowhere else if you're not giving 100% to your real life in the present,
Okay.
Which is why I don't understand why people sit on, value other people's lives and they obsess over what other people are doing because they're preventing themselves from living in their own real life,
Right? It's like, I'm not going to cry because I'm not Oprah. That was never, ever going to happen. I'm not Oprah. I don't have Oprah. Anyway, let me get off.
Right.
But
and that's okay.
Right. Speaking of Oprah, because I need to have a T-shirt that says "I'm just trying to please God, my mom, and Oprah" in that order. But is there anybody in particular that you would say kind of shaped or impacted you navigating your career journey?
Yeah. So I'll start with the most highest being God, right? Because when I couldn't see what was going on, he was just kind of playing puppet strings, because there were some situations I entered into or got out of that weren't me, right? So there's that. And that's just goes without being said. And then following that, I had a lot of people who influenced me at some point in my life, but the very first person who really drove it home that I could do something and that saw me beyond, one was my sister Charlotte. She was the one who kind of started it, and then the person who drove it home all the way was my father, Courtney Gillibo, who has had his own life, right? He's like any other man from Detroit who's had his, ups and downs and ins and outs. And for some reason, he just hard down believed that I could do something. Even when I didn't, he was like, no, you are fighting in the middle of the street today, but you are still like gonna be this, this, and this. I still see that you're worth this, and you have to be this because this is who you're supposed to be. So it would be him, and then so many women mentors I had after I got to college because I needed that. But definitely God and my father were two of the biggest, just the biggest folks who that unconditional love is, and they gave it to me. So those are, I would say, those two people, and then everybody else. Well, God, and then my dad, and everybody else.
And your sister.
And my sister, yes. And my sister, and you cannot forget Charlotte. Charlotte, Courtney, Courtney dad, my family, Wanda Finney, who was my first, who gave me my first government job, Abe, who gave me a job the summer, where I didn't have a job. I became a maintenance staff person. So you can't really forget. It was so many folks that just, saw something that I didn't see. I was just showing up and being. And all these other people just kind of moved me where I needed to go, as long as I showed them that I could do it,
Do you feel that people nudged you forward or gave you a shot or believed in you more because of your grades or because of your character?
I believe that they believed in me because there was never a time where, even in my imperfection, again, I was given 100% of what I had, and I was showing up 100% to where I was. So although I wasn't showing up as the more measured and, established person I am today, I still was given what I had to where I was, and trusting God that he would add the rest. And whatever was supposed to come out of those situations, just added it to my toolbox and moved on. And then I would show up somewhere else with 100% of everything I brought with me. And I showed up. If I was filing papers, I filed those papers like that was going to be my last job ever. If I was asked to get coffee, I asked how many creams, how many sugar, like whatever it was I needed to do to be in the rooms that were allotted to me at those times. I was 100% grateful and given 100% of what I had. And I think that comes out. I couldn't give them what I didn't have. So whatever 100% was at those times, that's what I gave. And now my 100% today looks different than 100% back then. But because I have had to add all those things to who I am today, you can't skip steps. I tell kids all the time, ain't no way you can skip steps, because everything is important. Every stage, everything. You cannot skip steps, because had I skipped steps, my 100% today wouldn't look like what it looks like. A councilwoman wouldn't be the case. Planner, having been NYU educated and HBCU educated, wouldn't be what it is without Tallahassee Community College. But at the time when I didn't know those things were going to exist, I was given 100% to Tallahassee Community College. and 100% to sleeping in the car because that's where I was at the time, and then 100% to the apartment after the fact, and then 100. It's always giving what you have to where you are, and you can't skip steps. And I think people like to skip steps. So I believe that's and the people that he sent me around me that would invest in me. I believe that God was approving my paths by sending me those people, because every step of the way, he sent me people who would ultimately help me get where I needed to go. But I had to do my part. People don't invest in you when you're not doing your part. I had to show up. I had to be on time. I had to show that I was grateful. I had to, answer the call when necessary. So it wasn't just them helping me and me not doing anything in return. And most of the time, all they asked for me in return is for me to give it all I had. That's it. That's all they required. And that's all I had to do. And there are times where I didn't always have it. And then that's where God's grace came in and just carried me on through. So I believe that it had more to do with, again, the hustle. People see that. When you have it, people see it,
Would you say that, because hustle seems really impromptu almost, in a way, did you have goals? Do goals play a part in your journey somehow, or is just
Yes.
like it's all wing it?
No, they played a part. I was very goal oriented, from getting everything done on a to-do list for that day or that week or that month. And the funny part is, goals look different and they don't have to be big. So when I got to Tallahassee Community College, no matter what I did in between, the goal was to graduate with my associates, right? So there were things that came in between, and maybe the daily goal of going to class and then turning my assignment on time was still a part of the larger goal of graduating. And then maybe making the dean's list may have been a part of my larger goal of getting a better chance at going to another school after the fact, because the goal was to transfer to another school. And when I got to the other school, the goal was to graduate from that school. So there were always things that I had in mind or that I kept in sight that I was working towards. And so goals do matter, and being goal oriented matters, but the nuances and the journey along the way is all, just a part of your own individual story. But there was always something I needed to do to get where I wanted to go. The older I get, the more I kind of laugh at things are a little bit more fluid, because my goal was to graduate NYU and be a public servant. Now, the council, being a councilwoman and serving in the city of Plainfield, were, opportunities that came as a result of having a goal to graduate NYU, become a public servant. In between, I was volunteering, I was, doing, internships and things over here and there, and those opportunities came. But I came up here to go to grad school and obtain my master's. That was the goal. Everything else in between were opportunities that were results of that goal. So goals are important, and having things in sight are important, but also learning when to shift and maneuver based on what feels right is also important,
That is such that's an important lesson that not a lot of people learn, that lesson. And it's almost like it shifts instant gratification to a back seat in a way, so that I mean, because a lot of the likes and the sharing and all of this stuff, and so it's like instant gratification, as opposed to just delaying it, and everybody's trying to be somebody else, and this goes viral, so I have to repeat that, and there's no individuality in the content because everybody's doing the like I don't know, it just
I have a nickname at one of my jobs that was very influential. Shout out to Dunn Consulting. It's a Black women-owned policy and political operation and strategy firm. I worked there for some time, and I remember passing out T-shirts. That was the first assignment I had on a campaign. I was passing out the T-shirts, and this is while I was in grad school. I had all this government experience, but I was never too big to start again. And so I was passing out T-shirts, And while I was passing out T-shirts, I said, somebody looked at me and there was some commotion going on. And I said, I'm going to continue to pass out these T-shirts because I'm Michael Phelps and I believe in staying in my own lane. He won so many gold medals just in life because all he had to do, the single thing he had to do was stay in his lane and focus on his race. And so my nickname at that job and to my family at Dutton has become Phelps. And that's what I believe. Likes. And when I was, you know, scrubbing toilets and changing out drywall and all that stuff, wasn't nobody liking my MySpace page. And when I was on the third floor at FAMU, quiet, not at the club with no man, and wasn't dating until my senior year, and praying and being in the Bible, it wasn't no likes for that stuff. Now I'm on interviews and people care about what I have to say, and I'm getting invited places to speak and all that. And that came, but it came with the territory. But while I was on the way, I didn't have the cars that people back at home had when I came home for summer break. I didn't have the true religions. I wasn't in the red bottoms in college. I didn't get the Steve Maddens until my refund came. I wasn't the flyest. I shopped at the Goodwill. I learned my style by thrifting and all that other stuff because ultimately I had something bigger in mind. And that wasn't always cute. It wasn't always the cute thing to do. Now I have leisure. Now I have a little bit more. I can do a little bit more. And people want to know and be around me now. But back then it was me and my 7 friends. Even to this day, those are still my 7 friends. One of them are actually on your staff to this day, And it wasn't cute. It was lonely for all of us, actually, because we were doing things that didn't look cute to the people, maybe where we came from, but they were proud of us. They were always proud of us, but everybody wasn't willing to sacrifice the things that we had to get where we are. And maybe it wasn't meant for them. Maybe we were made to be examples of that. But I tell kids, look, you looking at Moneybag and whoever, whatever on Instagram, and that's fine because we had Word Up magazine and we had people to look to, but you can't forget to live your real life. Like there's no way around that. You can't skip steps at all. It don't happen that way. Those people couldn't skip steps. They just have people around to record it now. The highlights of it.
Facts.
Right.
Absolutely. I'm backing you all the way. I'm backing you all the way on that. Don't skip steps. You can't skip steps.
And I hope that kids from Detroit now ain't gonna leave, diminishing the reputation of our hustle that we have. I just pray that is not the case. But those of us that come from a certain era of the city, ain't no way around it. You can't skip. You got to do it. You got to grind it out.
I hear that. I think that, and I've gained a lot from this talk because it's just like, have goals, show up, learn where you're at. Don't be too big for what people ask you to do, and be consistent in putting your best foot forward and just show up. And I think that, that to me, that's, there was this girl in my high school, and she was a really good test taker. And she ended up being the valedictorian of my high school. Shout out to Sunita. But here's the thing is that there was no sense of who she was outside of getting an A on a test. She could regurgitate like nobody's business. She could take notes like nobody's business. But like how she made decisions and how she, her path was a lot more hectic, I would think, in some ways, because it was hard for her to find her own sense of self outside of just taking notes and taking the test and getting an A on that test. She had no sense of who she was. At least that's my take. That I'm not Sunita. But I think that individuality is so important. individuality is so important. And that comes from self-awareness, I think, and knowing what your priorities are for you, and just sticking with that. And that helps you not necessarily go where everybody else is going.
Yeah, it wasn't popular. Yeah, it's not a popular thing to do either. Mm-mm.
People are really big on being popular. Speaking of people, okay, if you have a question, or you want to share a comment with us, I've been trying to keep up with, because we've already answered a number of questions. I don't want Brittany to think she hasn't had any questions. I tried to kind of throw them in there, massage it a little bit into the conversation, but now would be the time in particular to share any questions or comments or appreciation or any of that stuff that you want to share with us. I myself appreciate, we all appreciate you taking the time to be with us here, Brittany. I just wanted to ask one last time.
Oh, I have questions. I thought you were looking for questions.
Go ahead.
I think ours sent a question. I don't know if his was addressed already. But while that's getting loaded up, it may have already been answered. Brittany, thank you for joining us today.
It's an honor.
How do you think those experiences in Florida and New York have impacted you and kind of expanded your just your views in general? And then I got a second question after that.
I think what it allowed me to do was see things differently. I think it allowed me to understand who I was in the grand scheme of like the world and see things in a bigger light. I believe that it shaped me because I believe that God knew that I needed those things to be successful, right? So I look at my education, I look at the ability to have moved to DC and Maryland and work in Virginia and be all these other places as just necessary parts of the journey, because there was a path laid out and he knew that I needed to be more than just the girl from Inkster and Claremont. You know what I'm saying? He knew that I needed to see other things, because I told him that my goal was to be an example, right? Like my goal was to be bigger and I didn't know what that looked like and I didn't have the tools necessarily at the time. So he knew that those parts of me, I look at them as just a VIP pass. I don't look at those things as a sum total of like all of who I am. I look at them as tools that I need to use on my journey. So my degrees are not, they don't define me necessarily, but they are tools. The experience, the knowledge, the skill sets that I have are tools that I have to pull from as I'm serving and as I'm living my purpose. So I believe that they were just necessary parts of the journey. I appreciate them and I'm grateful for them. But I want people to know that, like, you know, when you are moving about in the world, just know that these are necessary parts of the journey. But when you show up, as Ingrid was talking about, they don't make you, that's not all you are. They're a part of who I am, you know? And they were just necessary parts. And I learned something different from each of them, and I've gained so much from each experience, you know? I hope that answers the question.
I think so. Another thing, I remember, because we had you speak last year, and I remember when I met you at Camilla's graduation, and I was so surprised by what you said about your experiences in high school. I never would have thought that. But
it's the glasses. That's what it is.
But the second question is, so what would you say? You know, I'm into travel, and I think everybody should experience the world and other places. What would you say to a young person who hasn't considered living somewhere else, who's either scared of it or think that they're not able to do it or don't have the resource to do it?
Do it. Do it. That's what I'll say. It'll, again, if you walk in the right direction, if there's an opportunity presented to you, I say take it. and do so in the most strategic way possible. If I could go back, I probably would not have taken on so much debt in hindsight. But at the time, I wasn't scared of the debt. I'm still not scared of the debt because now who I am, I'm able to pay on it. And the things that I obtained from, making that leap are invaluable to who I am right now. I could have gone home and I could have stayed home and went to school for free. I was a state kid. I was in the foster care system. I could have went to school scot-free. But I also probably would have not grown. And those intangible things that I got from being scared but pushing past that fear, they they're invaluable to me right now. I would pay it in 5,000 times over if I ever made the money, because it was necessary. I look back and I look at who I am now, and the biggest thing I wanted to do was be able to wear the trues and the Cardis like everybody else at the time. That's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to have cash to spend downtown at the Jeezy concert. I wanted to, go to the Lyceum or whatever was happening at the time and be okay. That's what I wanted. Now I want to buy the block. Like, I want to be able to do those kinds of things. It's just, it changed. It changed a lot about who I am. And I just took a leap. And I tell any kid, take a leap. Because you're going to have to take a leap at some point, whether it's at home or somewhere else. Why not maximize the ability to do it?
Josh has 2 questions, and I believe he can unmute himself. And Josh, if you could just ask your first question so we stay focused here, and just ask your first question and then ask your second question after she answers. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sure. Turn my camera on. Hey, Brittany, how
Hi,
you
Josh.
doing? Hey, I'm one of the lead coding instructors here at Journey, and I just wanted you to maybe speak to some of your intuition and your gut feeling, because that's something that I've always had too, from a very young age, but so many people don't, right? So many people have trouble believing in themselves and, don't always feel like, we deal with imposter syndrome a lot, as we transition from, our backgrounds. We have a similar background, right? Born and raised in Detroit. And then we're segueing into these professional environments. And sometimes I experience with a lot of my coworkers and peers that they don't always feel like they belong, and I wonder if you just felt like that throughout your path that,
All the time.
different. Yeah. Like maybe
All the time. All the time. It gets worse, actually, the higher you go. Because the higher you go, the less people like yourself, unless you hanging with the rappers and the people who rap about it all the time. The higher you go, the less you meet people like you, because the statistics don't lie. We aren't in these spaces yet, and we still, while we're breaking into them, we still have a long way to go. So I can't kick it with somebody else all the time whose parents haven't experienced the things that I've experienced, who's, they're not sometimes the end all be all of their family making it, or, they're not that person in their family, or, they may not know what it's like to live in somewhere and, somebody who's been killed, or, this lifestyle that you can't get around if you're raised in a certain area. And for a long time, I wondered if, it was supposed to be me that was there, because I knew me, right? I knew where I came from, and life didn't reinforce that these are the kind of places where we are supposed to be. So I deal with that a lot. I deal with, the fact that I didn't speak proper English, going into college, or, I have a twang, and it ain't nothing I can do about it, right? Well, it is, right? Because if you ever read a paper from me or hear me articulate, you wouldn't guess those things. But those are things I had to add to my tool belt, So, and they don't always feel natural to me, like to the core of who I am. And I dealt with that. But the thing that helps me is being around people who accept me for exactly who I am, and spending as much time in those spaces as I am in spaces that don't reinforce that I'm supposed to be there, because it helps you come back and say, well, I'm here for a period of time and I have a purpose here. But that validation, the older you get, the more you do it, the more you realize how unique you are. And the more situations God puts you in to have to flex your muscle past that, it'll get better. It gets better. It's a muscle you have to build. And it's something that I certainly have had to build. I also will say that I won't act like identity politics don't play a role. I can clearly visibly see that people feel more comfortable sometimes when I enter the room if I just showed up this way. And usually they realize they have a monster when I start talking. So there are some people who don't experience that and don't have. So I recognize a privilege to some extent, but it doesn't mean that the imposter syndrome isn't any less real for me, even though I show up in a way that is easier for folks who are not our race to accept. I deal with it and it gets worse, you know. So, but you can do it. You can do it, and it's okay. You know, it's a muscle, and flex it. You know.
I think what you just said, if I can, what you just said about, you know, as you expand, and you were kind of touching on this a little bit earlier with traveling, your story is very unique the more you expand out. You know, so while you're in that smaller pool, we may have similar backgrounds, but the more you expand your horizons and meet more people and, you know, experience different people in life, you know, you realize just how unique your story is. So I thought that was amazing.
Yeah. And before we move on, I will say this. To be honest, you'll meet people who you feel this way around, and you'll find that folks be just as crazy as anybody else. And you've been worried all this time for what?
Right. Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. So
Do you have a second question, Josh?
Oh, okay. I thought you wanted me. Okay, so
Nah.
just really quick, are you allowed to practice urban planning in Detroit at all, or is your jurisdiction in New Jersey?
so there are licenses. Urban planning is one of those like nerdy careers that people don't talk to kids about. They always talk to them about being a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, working at the plant. You know, nobody walks into a school and say, "Hey, you could plan cities." You know, you can be nerdy and learn GIS and determine, you know, where the stadium, the Little Caesars Palace, gonna go downtown. You know, like people don't realize you can have a say in how these fields get used and all this stuff. And most people you'll find in this profession don't look like us, but they build and plan cities where we are. So I'm just gonna leave that where it's at. Hey, Detroit, how y'all doing? But, I'm actually in the process of studying, again, having goals and still being on the journey. I'm studying to get my national certification, which is called the AICP certification. So y'all wish me well in that. Again, it never ends. So I am still studying to do that. And then in the state of New Jersey, you have to have a New Jersey planner license on top of that. But once you get the national certification, you can pretty much go anywhere. And then there are different regional workshops and credits that you take to help you specialize. So Detroit is what we call a Rust Belt region, right? So there are industrial factors to our city that people who are good at environmental planning and, you know, transitioning, adaptive reusing some of our older you know, structures for new things and reimagining them. Those are different specialty areas that people in my field take. And if, you know, I studied in school, cities like Detroit were my clinical cities, because I wanted to learn, as we're moving out of industrialism, how do we start to reimagine some of these spaces and be fair to the people who have stayed in them when nobody else was investing. Yeah, I could, if I wanted to, if that's where God would have me to be. But right now, you know, he has me here, and, you know, I, again, have to give 100% to that until he shifts me otherwise.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're absolutely
Thank you,
welcome.
Josh. Thank you, Brittany. I mean, this has been a masterclass, and I appreciate every gem, every nugget, You were real with us, which is sometimes all you can ask.
Thank you.
Is that somebody is vulnerable and coming to the table and teaching us things that, man, we would have broke our foot off in that pothole. That pothole was there. So thank you to Brittany Claybrooks for being with us this week. Next week, we have Ross Weaver. I mean, you don't want to miss that one. They're all great. I mean, all praise, all praise. But for now, we're going to sign off of the live stream.